You read the rules of Marvel Champions. You took out your pre-construction deck cards. You followed the list. You played a few times with those decks and to see what they could do. And you had fun. You had a good time, but you seem to struggle now and again. And you want to get into the main aspect of the game, which is deck building. But every time you build a deck, maybe it doesn't work out quite the way you had hoped. Or maybe you were only flipping out 1 or 2 cards and that's it. And you want to go deeper and try different aspects. Where do you start? Where do you go? Let's take a look. Hello everyone, my name is Jason. I'm with D20 Woodworking and I'm so happy for you to be here today. We're going to get into the video in 1 second, talk a bit about deck building and maybe how to get better at deck building. But before we do, if you could do me a huge favor, right down below, if you could, right down below, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment. It really helps. All that stuff helps with the analytics of the channel. Analytics? Helps with the algorithm of the channel. All that stuff helps with the algorithm of the channel, and it allows me to keep producing content like this that hopefully you enjoy. So let's dive in and let's talk about deck building. The first thing I really want to do is talk about deck building and what you should be looking for, because a lot of times people just throw together a bunch of random cards, call it a day, but that's not quite what we need. So I want to take what I consider an easy example of what the game wants you to do, a medium example, and a very hard example of what the game wants you to do. So for me, an easy example of what the game wants you to do is actually taking Gamora. So Gamora is not easy to deck build per se, but it's almost obvious of what the game wants you to do. So let's read it really fast. On her alter ego side, it states, skilled tactician, you may include up to 6 attack and or thwart events in your deck from aspects other than your chosen aspect. That's your setup. That's very telling right there, because it's already telling you whatever aspect you pick, you can pick 6 cards outside of the aspect that are attack and or thwart events. So it's kind of pushing you towards event cards, specifically attack and thwart event cards. And then your action on your alter ego side you could take is look at the top card of the deck. If that card is an attack or thwart event, draw it. Limit once per round. Again, it's pushing you towards those events. So it's already kind of telling me how I want to build my deck. If I think, let's build aggression, all attack, well, I could throw in some justice, thwart, events, right, to help balance out, or do it the other way. You could build justice, thwart, events, and then throw in aggression, attack cards. Let's look at Gamora's hero side now. She's a 2/2/2. It says finesse. Response: after you play an attack event, remove 1 threat from a scheme. Limit once per phase. All right, so you can do it once on your phase and once on the villain's phase. Precision. Response: after you play a thwart event, deal 1 damage to an enemy. This is going to tell us a lot about Gamora and how she acts and interacts with the board. The reason being is because we now know playing these events gain certain bonuses, and generally in the game you want to use the skills that your alter ego or your hero have specifically. So let's look at her deck of 15 cards, because deck building, it's 40 to 50 cards. You generally pick 1 aspect, you pick cards in the aspect, and you can also use basic cards to fill out, so you get up to 40 cards, possibly 50. Each hero may let you manipulate the deck a little bit, so you have to read each hero, but that's the general gist of deck building. The 15 hero cards, though, that every hero starts with is completely unique and different, and those cards are important because, well, they're probably your strongest cards. Let's take a look. Like most heroes, Gamora has an ally card. Then we have 2 decisive blows, which we'll get into, 2 forward momentums, 2 set the pace cards, 2 cross counter, 2 acrobatic moves, 2 keen instincts, a Gamora sword, and conditioning room. So if we were to take a quick glance at these cards, it's going to tell us kind of what the game wants us to do. Now, already off the bat, we can see the vast majority of these cards are event cards. The vast majority of these cards. So let's start with our ally. So after Nebula enters play, search your deck for an attack or thwart event and add it to your hand and shuffle your deck. Again, it's pushing us towards those event cards. We want to be event card heavy, attack and thwart specifically. We'll get into her event cards in a second, but her upgrades Exhaust Keen Instincts, generate a wild resource for an attack or thwart event. Again, pushing us towards those things. The upgrade, Gamora's Sword, is a restricted. You're only allowed to have 2 restricted in play. After you play an attack event, deal 1 damage to an enemy. Again, attack event. Conditioning Room, Alter Ego. A lot of times there's support cards that are Alter Ego cards. Exhaust Conditioning Room, return the bottommost attack or thwart event from your discard pile to your hand, heal once. So let's go through the different events that she has. So one of the ones, we'll start in the bottom left here, is Acrobatic Move. It's a 0 cost event, attack event. So when you play this card, it's the first attack event you played, you also thwart once. Thwart once? No, you remove 1 threat. There is a distinction there, it's important to note, but you remove 1 threat. You deal 2 damage to an enemy. So 0 cost, 2 damage, plus if it's the first attack event you play, you remove 1 threat from the main scheme. Okay, let's look at the other attack, Decisive Blow. So Decisive Blow allows you to deal 4 damage to an enemy, 7 damage instead if you played a thwart event this turn. So now we can see why it's even more important to have a bunch of thwarts and a bunch of attacks, because if we had already played the thwart event, instead of this card being a 2 cost 4 damage, it's a 2 cost 7 damage, which is insanely high for this game. So maybe in your deck you want to have some cheaper thwart alternatives, right? If you're looking at your Justice cards, there's some 1 cost cards there. Pick them out, you can easily play them. Then you can play Decisive Blow, especially if you have 2 Keen Instincts out there. It's not going to cost you a lot of resource cards. Then we're going to look into Forward Momentum. It's a thwart card. Remove 3 threat from the scheme, 5 threat instead if you played an attack. Again, same as that concept. You can remove a lot of threat if you already played an attack event. So read the card fully, make sure you understand what it's trying to tell you and what it wants you to do. Then we could do Set the Pace, which lets you remove 1 threat from a scheme for 0 cost. If that's your first card, you can also do 1 damage. That's great. And arguably one of the best cards in the game, Cross Counter. When you would take any amount of damage, so not on your turn, okay? And this is important with the phase thing. Prevent 3 of that damage, deal 1 damage to an enemy, remove 1 threat from the scheme. Now that just sounds like a 1/1/1 card, right? 1 cost, you deal 1 damage, you remove 1 threat. But because it's now on the enemy phase that you're playing this card, it's actually 1 cost to prevent 3 damage, deal 1 damage, and then your precision skill, or nope, the other one. What's the other one? Finesse. your finesse skill allows you to remove 1 thwart. Then you remove 1 threat from the scheme, and your precision skill allows you to do 1 attack. So it's essentially a 1/2/2 card preventing 3 damage. Insanely good card, but you have to understand again what the deck is trying to have you do. So that's why I consider that more of an easy build kind of hand. It's not easy to build Gamora per se, because there are a lot of combinations and a lot of different things you can do. But as far as what the game is trying to tell you to do, I think it's very, very obvious what it wants you to do. So let's clean this up and let's go to a medium one that I think could be a lot of fun. All right, let's look at the next one. I want to look at Miss Marvel, or Kamala Khan. I'm gonna be honest, she's one of my favorite heroes, but it took me a really long time to get used to her because she plays a lot differently, I think, than other heroes. And it can be weird to get used to be honest. So let's first look at Kamala Khan's side. 5 recovery, hand size starts at 6, 10 hit points. I don't think I mentioned that on Gamora, but Gamora's exactly the same. 6 hand size, 10 hit points. Hero sides are usually always 1 less hand. Discard cards from the top of your deck until you discard a Miss Marvel card, then add that card to your hand. Alright, so the game wants you to get Miss Marvel cards, right? So it's almost nudging you that her cards might be the most powerful and you might have to set up cards that help support those cards. Now let's take a look at the other side. Miss Marvel is a 1/1/1, which is kind of really weak, right? Again, this game is almost telling me don't bother thwarting, don't bother attacking, don't bother defending with Miss Marvel, which most people look at and go, this doesn't seem like a very good character. But let's dive more into it. More for genetics. Yeah, I think I got that right for the first time. That's pretty good. After you play an attack, thwart, or defense event, exhaust Miss Marvel and return that event to your hand. So maybe Miss Marvel is actually better than we thought in the sense that she can play a wide range of things, right? You can do an attack, thwart, or defense event. You exhaust her and get that card back in your hand. Why would we want to do that? Let's see in a second. So we're going to take out her 15 cards and see what she has. So first we have her ally. Then we have the big hands event. Oops, there's 3 of them. Then we have the sneak by event. 3 of those. Which that should tell you a lot already. There's 3 of certain types of cards. Wiggle room, 2 of them. We have an upgrade with, let's move these up. Biokinetic polymer suit. And Biggin, it's a huge card and one that people overlook a lot. Shrink, Bruno Corelli, sorry Bruno, and Nakia Bahadir. Oh, and her brother Amir Khan. Alright, so already you could tell the difference in this deck versus Gamora, right? There was a lot more upgrades and support cards and less event cards. We have to figure out why. So when we look at this, first let's look at Red Dagger. When Red Dagger is defeated, spend 2 resources of different types, deal 2 damage to an enemy, any enemy, which could be big, and return Red Dagger to your hand. Again, it's having that return to your hand ability, which is interesting. Let's start with Biokinetic Power Suit. We can exhaust this card on the hero side to generate a wild resource for an event, any event. Resource regeneration, huge. So if we choose to go, let's say aggression, we could use aggression cards that have resource generation, and we can use this as well, generate a lot of resources. You could set up a situation where you're just generating resource through upgrade and or support cards on your game table and not having to throw out a lot of your hands. That might be where the game is kind of pushing us. Let's look at Biggin, which is honestly probably where most of her deck is built around. And it's the card that a lot of people don't put a lot of value in for whatever reason. But Hero Interrupt. When you play an attack event, exhaust Biggin. Increase the amount of damage that event deals by 2. So again, kind of pushing us towards attacking if we need to be more aggressive at character. 2 doesn't seem like a lot until you're playing 3, 4, 5 damage cards that are event cards. You're looking at a lot of damage right then for an upgrade that's out. Next we have Shrink, which is essentially the same as that card, but increases Thwart instead. So we have cards that let you focus in on attack and let you focus in on thwarting. Then we have our 3 support cards. Let's get into Bruno. On the alter ego side, exhaust Bruno and attach 1 card from your hand face down here, which is pretty interesting because now you can have a larger hand essentially, right? Well, we'll see that in a second, but you can save cards. You get that 1 card and you can't play it yet, but you don't want to waste it, right? You don't want to just have it sit in your hand. You can throw it under, save it for another day. The action side, right, which is I assume a hero action, but it could really be, I guess, any action. Exhaust Bruno, add up to 3 cards attached here to your hand. So you could set for a big hand. You got a lot of cards you want to play with. All right, we do that. We pull those cards out. Nakia. Exhaust Nakia, reduce the cost of the next card you play this phase by 1. So now this is interesting because this is almost like resource regeneration, but built out a little bit differently. So a lot of times in the resource regeneration, a lot of stuff, it's hero resources and not always alter ego. Sometimes you can find them, sometimes you can't. But this is specifically alter ego side. You reduce the cost of 1 of your cards to play an alter ego, especially if it's a situation where you flip, you can play some cards alter ego, reduce the cost. Then the next turn, you draw up your cards, right? You can play your cards. You can get kind of 2 reduced costs for that, which can help a lot. All right, Amir. Exhaust Amir Khan. Place 1 card from your discard pile on the bottom of your deck. Then draw 1 card. Again, it wants us to draw cards, put cards back in our hands. Now let's go into the events and let's see what these event cards tell us. So we'll start with Wiggle Room. It's a defense superpower. Pay attention to the keywords. Superpower is an important keyword in this game because there are cards that let you get out superpower cards easier, and you probably want to have those cards in your deck. So Hero Interrupt. When you would take any amount of damage, prevent 3 of that damage, draw a card. Again, it wants us to find certain cards. It's pushing us toward those cards to be able to get them out, draw them back in. Especially with her ability. So we play a card, draw it back in. Sneak By. Remove 3 threat from a scheme, and that's it. Now you might be thinking that doesn't sound that great, right? 2 for 3, that's not that great. But when you combine it with Shrink, that should be out there, you're now talking about 5 threat removal. You play that card for a cost of 2. Then you can exhaust her, pull this card back up, hopefully pay for it again. So realistically, you should hopefully be able to play, even if you had 5 cards in your hand and you had this card and 4 random cards in your hand, and let's say you had no resource generators out there, you can play this card for 2, right? Still have 2 cards in your hand, exhaust her, pull it back up, play it again for 2. So you could get 5, no, you would get 5 plus the 3, so 8. 8 threat removal in 1 round, which could be a huge swing for any single round. It's really, really, really could be good, but again, Miss Marvel needs to be set up for that. Now, big hands is kind of the same exact idea, so you deal 4 damage to the enemy. Again, why is this important? Because with Embiggen, right, you exhaust Embiggen to increase the attack by 2. So you could do 6 plus another 4, which is 10. Now, again, if you have anything that adds on to that, right, either lets you get more attack on your events or anything like that, you could swing for big hits. So it's almost you want to build your deck for attacking or thwarting. Maybe defense. That might be an interesting concept of protection Miss Marvel. I'm not quite sure how it would work that yet. But again, you could see that you want to kind of key off these 2 groups of cards is almost where the deck is pushing you, right? If you want to be a more aggressive Miss Marvel, get more attack cards in your deck. Almost fish for these big hand cards, right? Get them out there, play them, Miss Marvel, play them again. Go on the other side. You can start reducing the cost to play different upgrades and whatnot. There's a ton of different things you can do, but again, it's not as obvious what the game wants you to do because there's so many avenues. And this is the other type of hero that I really see, is that you can go a ton of different avenues, and maybe on the surface these cards just seem kind of mediocre, but when you start thinking about, okay, if I mix it with certain aggression cards that add 1 to my attack, or aggression cards that do resource regeneration or do other things, maybe this starts to get more interesting. Maybe we also put in just attack event cards that, I don't know, are 3/5, and we can add 2 more, so now we're swinging 3/7, which could be huge. Could be absolutely devastating. And then get that attack event back and then swing for another 3/5. So we're looking at 12 damage off of certain aggression cards, right? These are the things you kind of want to do. So this to me, Miss Marvel always takes a little more effort to deck build. It's kind of tough, but it's really worth it in the end, right? She does a good job as once you kind of build her out, which makes her a little tough for solo. So now we looked at an easy one with Gamora. We looked at a medium one, Miss Marvel. We should look at a hard one. And I guess if we're going to do this, we should look at the hardest one out there. Oh god, I'm going to need a lot more coffee before I do this. All right, here we are. When I first originally thought about doing this, I wanted to think about one of the hardest heroes to build for, especially for solo. And easy and medium ones were kind of difficult to figure out because it is kind of subjective of what most people consider easy or medium hard build decks, right? Some people will say Gamora is kind of on the harder side, and I get it. Some people might even say Kamala Khan is easier because she is a really good, probably support character, and a lot of people think to use her for just pure solo. But I'm willing to bet when anyone thinks of the hardest character to deck build for, there's one that comes to mind. Because it's such a terrible character. Let's get into Hulk. Bruce Banner. Now, it's really a shame because I actually really like Hulk in the Marvel Universe. I think Hulk is a lot of fun. The problem is Hulk in this game is terrible. And I don't mean terrible as like it's really difficult to deck build for him, or, you know, he's actually super good, but it's really complicated to build him up. His deck's just not good. And that's what makes it so hard to build for, because you almost feel like you're compensating in the deck with trying to get other cards from the game to make him even just decent. But if you made it this far, I'm really curious. If you have a good deck build for Hulk, let me know in the comments. Timestamp wherever we are in this video. And either link to it or talk about ways that you improve your Hulk, because this is one of those cards, or one of those heroes I should say, that I continuously try to deck build for, because now it just becomes a challenge, right? Now it's just to the point that I want to see if I can do it. I want to see if I can make him decent. So let's look at Bruce's, or Hulk's alter ego side. So for recovery, hand size of 5 on the alter ego side, which is never a great sign. But hit points are 18, which is a mind-boggling huge number. And I still think that's the key to playing a decent Hulk, and we'll get into that in 1 second. So experimental research, action. Draw 1 card, choose and discard 1 card from hand. Limit once per round. This is maybe the worst alter ego action. It's not. It's you draw a card and remove a card. So you don't even get a bonus card hand size. You don't even get to fish for a card that you want. You just hope the next card is okay. And then you discard it. So you made your deck even smaller. So whatever. Now let's look at Hulk. So Hulk is a 0. So obviously the game doesn't want us to thwart with him at all. 3 attack, 3 defense. Okay. Attack and defense. We can work with that. Enrage, force interrupt. All right, this is his special ability as a hero. When your turn ends, discard your hand. Okay. So you would expect with something like that, Hulk's cards must be insane. They must be the best cards you've ever seen in your entire life. They have to be low cost, high hit, right? But the problem is you have to play him, and it's just such hard choices of what to play, right? There's gonna be so many options, and your hero's hand size is a 4 limit, so surely all the cards in there must be like 1, maybe 2 cost cards, right? There can't be that many expensive cards because then you never get to play them, and Hulk's one special ability that's really just kind of detrimental to you, surely that wouldn't like hurt you or help you more, right? All right, let's look at what he has. So first thing you'll notice in his deck, there's it's not a hero, there's no ally card. Hulk has no allies, but we do have an interesting 2-3 resource generators, fist icons. Then we have an upgrade. We have a support. We have Hulk Smash Event, Hulk Suborbital Leap, Unstoppable Force, Crushing Blow, and Thunderclap. Again, a lot of events that are getting thrown at us, and a resource generator card that's +3. Interesting. All right, so let's look at Hulk's upgrades and supports first, because there might be a key of what we're supposed to be doing here. Immovable object. You get +4 hit points, and Hulk gains Retaliate 1. So this is actually a really interesting card, and I've tried to build a Hulk around this. And I think I did it slightly wrong. But to get 4 more hit points gets Hulk up to 22 life, which is an insane amount of life. You can handle a lot of attacks and just keep getting hit in the face. And if you get Retaliate 1, every time you get hit, you do 1 damage back. Now, when I did this, I took that as I should be playing defense cards because he has a 3 defense. I tried to play that way, and I wasn't doing enough attack, so it wasn't quite working out the way I would hope for it to. But if I was to try this again, I would try to make an aggression deck, kind of almost based around that card, where we can hit for Retaliate 1. Hopefully it knocks off any tough status or anything like that. Next one, Boundless Rage. Hero form only, Hulk gets 1 attack. So now he's swinging for 4 each time. So we were talking about Kamala Khan, where she has the ability to play an event card that does 4 damage. He can just hit for 4. Which is probably his best strength. Now, the other thing is after you change form, you discard this card. So this game wants you to stay as Hulk, right? It's not going to have you switch back and forth, which would indicate maybe that this is a better deck for solo. But it's not. All right, so Banner's Laboratory. Bruce Banner gets 2 recovery. Interesting. And you can exhaust this card to generate 1 science resource. Surely it wants us to generate a science resource because those are really important to us in this deck. You'll see in a second. It's the most useless card in the world. Then we get into the event cards. And the first thing you'll notice is there's 1, 2, 3 sets. So 2, 4, 6 cards that cost 3. And you have a hand size of 4. So that means literally you can only play 1 of these cards each round. Hulk's moves are very quick. Very kind of annoying. Let's look at Hulk Smash. When you make a basic attack, you get +10 attack for that attack, right? So he's swinging for 13, 14 if you have a movable object. If you pay for this card using only strength resources, which is the fist icon, that attack gains overkill. So if there is a minion out there, you can hit the minion, probably most likely knock it out and do some damage on top of it to another character. But you need to pay for this card using only strength resources. Then we have Suborbital Leap. Remove 3 threat from a scheme, 5 threat instead if you pay for this card using only strength resources. Okay, so he does have the ability to threat when he absolutely desperately needs to, and it's kind of how I read that card, right? He's not meant to thwart, but if you absolutely have to do it and you have the right resources, you can probably end up doing it, or do it once, maybe twice a game, get 5, knocks it down pretty good, gets you at least another round or 2, right? And then Thunderclap, again, another 3-cost card. Choose up to 3 different enemies, deal 3 damage to each of them. So again, it doesn't matter the resources we play for that, but it allows us to do 3 here, 3 there, 3 in the next place. So 9 damage total, but not 9 damage to one enemy, just 3 separate. We get into Crushing Blow. I guess we should do first. You can only spend attack resources to pay for this card. So obviously we need to have whatever we pick, probably aggression. It needs to have a lot of attack resources, like all attack or wild, essentially, resources. Deal damage to an enemy equal to your attack. Which again, this could be a 1, almost 4 card, right? Because if you have this, it gets you +1 attack. If you have another aggression card that gets you up to +5 attack, this might not be bad. It's a 1 for 5 card, plus then you can swing for another 5, do 10 damage. Or if you play it with this, you can essentially do 15 damage, 20 damage. 20 damage. There could be a ton of attack there as long as the enemy, doesn't have tough roll or a defender of any sort, or not getting ganged up by a lot of enemies, or your threat's getting out of control, or it's really the collector stage where it's all about thwarting a lot. Other than those things, I'm sure you're doing fine with Hulk. And the last one, which is such a weird card. A 2-cost card, so you only have 4 cards in hand. You play this card, you play 2, so that means you have 1 card left. Okay, you just have 1. If you pay for this card using only strength resources, draw a card, and you ready Hulk. So you can ready Hulk. So essentially, if I have 4 or 5 attack, you can do 2 to 5. Draw a card. Now I have 2 cards in my hand. I mean, maybe hopefully I get Crushing Blow and something else, and I can pay for Crushing Blow and deal damage. That's your best hope. That I have a 40-50 card deck is I happen to get Crushing Blow and I can happen to use it, and hopefully I have a strength resource I can play it and then do more attack, right? It's such a Unstoppable Force is such a weird card. It doesn't make 100% sense for his deck. It's super specific to use. So Hulk is extremely hard to deck build for because you're kind of really limited what you could do, to the point that I'd say all Hulk can really do is aggression with a lot of strength resources, and I guess maybe some basic cards that have wild resources, but outside of that, there's not much else you can do, and you need to play his cards, and his cards are going to be an entire round, right? You can't carry anything over. So if I get a Hulk Smash, Suborbital Leap, Thunderclap, and Unstoppable Force, well, a lot of key cards that I might want to save for the round, I can't anymore, right? They're used, so I throw them out. I still don't fully understand why you generate a science resource. I mean, I guess to stop the confusion of generating for a strength resource. I don't know. It's such a weird thing. Banner's Laboratory is just, again, if you flip over, yes, you can heal for 6, and it's kind of a last ditch effort, but you lose your Boundless Rage, right? That gets discarded. So you lose 1 strength over the course of several rounds, which isn't great. And then you're at a weird hand size again. I don't know. It's really, I'm not gonna lie, it's really tough to play Hulk and to make Hulk decent. All right, well, there you have it. So we went over kind of easy, medium, hard deck building and what we want to look for. Again, take the clues the game is giving you. Look at what the hero card says, not just on the hero side, but also the alter ego side. We have a tendency to only look at the hero side. Look at both sides. See what the game wants you to do and build toward that and experiment. And if you're playing a round or 2 with your hands and you realize, oh, there's a card in my deck that time and time again I just use as a resource and I'm not using it for its main like action or ability or anything like that, maybe that's because that card doesn't belong in your deck. Maybe it's just not a good card for that deck, unless it's a resource generator card. Remove that card, right? If it's not serving a purpose and it's just a basic resource, well, any card can be a resource card. So just remove that card, see if something else makes sense. If you realize while you play a game, oh, I wish I had more attacking ability or more thwarting ability, adjust your character that way and play it over and over and over. And the next part to really learn about is you have to learn the the villain side of things. You have to understand what each villain is trying to do to you and build your deck around that. So anyway, I hope these tips and tricks kind of helped you out. If you ever want me to get into more specific decks and really break down those decks and show different things, again, let me know. And there's one that really sticks out in your mind, let me know, and we'll have some fun with it. And we'll see some fun things we do, and maybe we'll run through the deck live and see how it does. All right, everyone. Thank you once again for watching. I appreciate it. Take care.